Another purpose of this lab is to measure the eutectic temperature and the eutectic composition of a mixture of benzoic and mandelic acid. To do this, you will measure the melting temperature range for pure benzoic acid and also measure the melting temperature range for pure mandelic acid, and you'll measure the melting temperature range for a series of 4 mixtures of varying compositions of benzoic and mandelic acid. So you'll have a mixture of 80% benzoic, 20% mandelic, 60% benzoic, 40% mandelic, 40% benzoic, 60% mandelic, and 20% benzoic, 80% mandelic. So these various compositions of benzoic and mandelic acid will be prepared for you and on the cart so that you can measure the melting temperature. So when a mixture is made, it would have a lower temperature, melting temperature range compared to the pure substance. And so these mixtures will have a lower temperature range of melting and also a broader range of melting compared to pure benzoic and pure mandelic acids. And after you measure these melting temperature ranges, the purpose of doing this is to find the eutectic composition and the eutectic temperature. To do that, you'll make a graph of your data. So on the y-axis, you'll have the temperature in degrees Celsius. On the x-axis, you'll have the composition of 100% benzoic, 0% mandelic, all the way over to 0% benzoic, 100% mandelic. And you'll plot the upper end of your melting temperature range on the graph for each of these substances and mixtures. So I made some sample data that you can look at to see how your graph might look. Now remember, when you make a graph, it must be plotted on graph paper. Also, your graph should cover most of the page. It should be large so that you can easily interpret the data in the graph. So let's say that your data comes out to be this, where your 80% benzoic, 20% mandelic melts completely at 105 degrees, and then your other mixtures melt at these temperatures. So what this graph shows is that the lowest temperature of melting for any of these mixtures is 85 degrees Celsius. And so that tells you that the eutectic temperature is 85 degrees Celsius. The composition of this mixture that has the lowest melting temperature is 60% benzoic, 40% mandelic, and so that composition is the eutectic composition. Now, we only took melting temperature ranges for 4 mixtures, so this data is not very precise. In order to know more precisely the eutectic temperature and the eutectic composition, you would need to measure many more mixtures, but in this experiment there's just not the time, so we get this approximation.